Welcome to another lesson of From Shelves to Shores, brought to you by the Choctawhatchee Basin Alliance and AmeriCorps Northwest Florida Environmental Stewards.
Hello explorers, and welcome to your second lesson of From Shelves to the Shores. My name is Amanda Bryant, and I am the Education Coordinator of the Choctawhatchee Basin Alliance. With me today, I have a few AmeriCorps members who are going to help me teach you more about our watershed and oysters. But first, let's review why smooth cordgrass is important. First, this grass creates a habitat for lots of critters like crabs and shrimp and juvenile fish. It also helps prevent erosion with those strong roots. It also helps filter and absorb pollution from stormwater runoff. Let's go to our Enviroscape and learn a little bit more about that. So this is what we call an Enviroscape. It is a model or a representation of our watershed. So this is what you might find around our community: neighborhoods, construction sites, factories, farms, roads. That everything all leads to one point, and that is the Choctawhatchee Bay. So what happens is that we have pollution in all of these areas. In our neighborhood, we might have things like, what do you think? We might have trash. We might have some chemicals from cleaning supplies. We might have dog poop. Dog poop acts as fertilizer, which causes algal blooms in our Choctawhatchee Bay, and then when that algae starts to die, it sucks out all the oxygen from the water, which our fish need. Our construction site might have things like sediment pollution that gets into the water. That sediment, when it gets in the water, makes it really cloudy. It makes it hard for fish to see. Then the roads, we're gonna have, what do you think comes from cars? Gas and oil, maybe some more trash from people. Very good. In our farm, what might we have there? We might have some cow poop. We might have some fertilizer, which does the same thing as the poop from our dogs and our cows, causing the algal blooms. We might have some pesticides. And if pesticides kill bugs on our farms, do you think it'll kill fish in our waters? For sure. Then we have things like our factory here, which might have things like sludge come out of them. And sludge is just another way of saying chemicals and bad stuff. And that's going down to our bay. So when we start to have rainstorms, which we have a lot of here in Florida, this rain is going to start picking up those pollutions. Whatever water is not absorbed by the land will run across the land like this water is doing and starts picking up pollutions. And then where is it going? It's going to the Choctawhatchee Bay. Very good. Now, do you think this is a good thing? Definitely not. Do you think that's clean water that you want to swim in? Or that our fish want to swim in? Definitely not. So we need to do something to make this not happen. So one thing we can do to help with pollution that gets in the stormwater runoff is we can plant smooth cordgrass. Remember, we had things like dog poop, chemicals, and garbage coming from our neighborhoods. From the construction zone, we had things like sediment and soil. The road had gas and oil. The farm had fertilizer and pesticides. The factory had sludge, which is all the chemicals that are produced from them. Then we have our rain that becomes stormwater runoff. The water runs over the land, picking up pollution, but now we have smooth cordgrass represented by this green felt, absorbing the pollution, helping it not get into the bay. This looks like a much healthier bay for our fish and for us.
So now I'm going to read you a story, the story of Sweet Pete, so we can learn a little bit more about our watershed. The story of Sweet Pete. Sweet Pete's journey begins at a sweet pea farm in southeastern Alabama. He lived there with a variety of bugs and insects, but he was a bit of a misfit. All of the other farm dwellers enjoyed munching on the sweet peas that the farmers planted there, but Sweet Pete never had much of a sweet tooth. He always dreamt of a more satisfying environment. One day, the farmer grew tired of sharing his crops with the critters. "I work hard to harvest these sweet peas, and these lazy pests just eat up my profits," the farmer complained. He sprayed his crops with chemicals called pesticides. Pesticides are poisons used by farmers to get rid of bugs. "This should get rid of them," the farmer sneered. All of the bugs quickly scurried away from the spray, but Pete, being a snail, was slower than the others and was left in the dust. And then, all of a sudden, it began to storm fiercely. There was so much rain that not all of the water was able to be absorbed by the land. This created stormwater runoff. The pesticide from the farm was washed away with it. As the poison-filled waters rose, Pete climbed to the top of a tall blade of grass, where he spotted an empty pea pod that had also been carried by the runoff floating by. He climbed aboard the pod and set sail. Little did Sweet Pete know, he had just begun an epic journey across the Choctawhatchee Bay watershed. The stormwater runoff would soon carry him and his vessel to the Pea River, and the river water would eventually pour into the Choctawhatchee River, and finally drain into the Choctawhatchee Bay in Florida. Lost but hopeful, Pete sailed down the Pea River for days until he reached the Choctawhatchee River, where he was startled by a huge splash. His pod rocked in the waves and nearly capsized. "Whoa, bro, my bad. I didn't see you there," a friendly voice shouted out to him. When his pod settled, Pete peered over the edge. He sat in awe of the powerful prehistoric fish that greeted him. The fish felt bad and could tell Pete was shaken. "Are you okay, little dude? That would have been one gnarly wipeout. You would have been toast if I'd landed on ya. I was catching some mega air on that jump." I think I'm okay," Pete stammered as he admired the armor-like scaled sword sported by the fish. "You like my scoots, yeah?" the Gulf sturgeon bragged. "They're pretty hardcore. The humans like them too. Their kind has been fishing us for a long time. That's why there aren't many of us left. The name is Sturgeon Steve. Where are you headed?" "They called me Sweet Pete. Ain't sure where I'm headed. I started this voyage a while back when the farmer sprayed this awful stuff on the fields called pesticide. All us critters had to skedaddle, but big old storm came through and I've been floating on this here pod, just a-going with the flow ever since. I reckon I'll hang my hat wherever this water takes me." "You're one brave little dude taking this journey on solo. I know these waters like the back of my fin. Every fall, my crew and I cruise down to the Choctawhatchee Bay and Gulf of Mexico to get our grub on. We find all the best grub in the salty, brackish water." "Salty, eh? That sure sounds nice. You mind if I hitch a ride with you folks?" Pete eagerly asked Steve. "Not at all. You seem like a cool dude. You dig salty stuff, huh? There's some righteous grass down there on the shoreline that could be your new crib." The two chattered excitedly as they continued down the river together. But then Steve seemed to be confused. Whoa, bro, something is up with these waters. They aren't as tubular as usual. Suddenly, a darling little fish darted across their path. She seemed to be upset. Slow down, little mama. You all right? Steve asked the little fish. No, I'm not all right. I'm lost, she cried. Ever since those humans came in to build their fancy schmancy homes and moved around all the nearby dirt with their big noisy machines, my creek's flow is slow and I can't see a thing in these cloudy waters. I'll never find my way home. Don't worry, darling, Pete comforted her. We'll help you find your way. What's your name? The cute dainty fish sniffled. My name is Darcy, and I'm a darter. Please help me. I'm afraid I'll never have a real home. I've been darting from creek to creek, and each time they soon become murky. I need a forever home to call my own. No worries, Darcy. I know of a primo creek that some friendly humans have protected for your kind of dudes and dudettes, and we're headed down there now. Steve invitingly asked her to join them. Darcy smiled and agreed to join them, and the trio ventured further down the Choctawhatchee River. When they came to the end of the river, and Sturgeon Steve jumped with excitement, as he often did, and shouted, "We made it! This is it! The Choctawhatchee Bay! You dudes will be at your new humble abodes in no time." Soon after, they came upon a beautiful, clear, flowing creek. Darcy squealed joyously, "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you! This will make a perfect home for me and my future family." And she darted away just as quickly as she had appeared. Sweet Pete and Sturgeon Steve waved goodbye to Darcy and continued through the bay. Pete kept his eye on the shoreline grass for a suitable grass to call home. Then a sparkle caught his eye. That there grass looked really swell. He paddled his pod closer to find the sparkle he saw was actually salt crystals emerging from the smooth leaves. It was perfect. "That's the righteous grass I was telling you about, bro," Steve smiled. "I knew you'd dig this smooth cord grass. It has gnarly roots, so stays put in all this gnarly wave action. And check out this water, dude, super clean. This grass filters and absorbs that nasty runoff that's full of pollution, like that pesticide you told me about." Pete climbed up the blades of smooth cordgrass and licked his lips with excitement. He had finally found his forever home that would satisfy his salty cravings. "I'll climb up and down these here leaves all the livelong day. Thanks, Steve," Sweet Pete said with a smile. "No problemo, bro. Happy to lend a helpful fin to a friend. I'll swing by and visit on my way back. There's an oyster shell hotel nearby I can stay at, so we can chill for a while before I head back up the river." After another fun-filled day with Sweet Pete in the smooth cordgrass, it was time for Sturgeon Steve to move on. So with a final giant jump, Sturgeon Steve was off to the Gulf of Mexico to feast with his sturgeon friends. To this day, you can find Darcy and her family of Okaloosa darters darting through the clear, flowing waters of Rocky Creek. Sweet Pete and his family of salt marsh periwinkle snails continue to dwell in the smooth cordgrass and enjoy the salty environment. And every year, Sturgeon Steve swings by to visit on his way out to the Gulf. They all continue to live happily in their forever homes where they belong. The end.
Let's do an experiment so that we can see how plants can absorb pollution from stormwater runoff.
We're going to be doing an experiment to show how plants can absorb pollution. In order to do that, you're going to need a few items. First, you will need a glass or a jar with some water in it. Second, you will need some food coloring. A dark color works best, like blue or maybe red. You will also need celery, preferably with some leaves still attached. And you will also need some scissors, or a knife would work as well. First, we need to color our water. We're going to do that by adding our food coloring. Now, our food coloring is going to represent the pollution we might find in water. I'm going to add about 5 drops to my container. How much you need to add will depend on how much water you have. And just a reminder, be careful with the food coloring because it could stain your clothes. Okay, next you're going to need your parents' help. We are going to cut off the end of our celery. So I'm just going to cut it here. And now I'm going to use it to stir up my food coloring. And it looks like mine's dark enough, so we are going to let this sit. You can leave this on the counter out of the way somewhere because plants can absorb or drink this much water as fast as you or I can. We'll need to come back and observe in a few hours and then again the same time tomorrow.
Here's the celery just a few hours after putting it into the blue water. You can see it's already starting to absorb the water and the blue dye. After 24 hours, we can see our celery has absorbed even more water, so much so that even the leaves are turning blue. After 48 hours, we can see even more blue in the leaves and even at the tip of the stalk. This experiment shows how plants absorb water and anything that is in the water. This can include pollution, which is why our smooth cordgrass is so important in filtering pollution from stormwater runoff. Here we are at a park on the Choctawhatchee Bay. We came here to show you a really cool animal that can be found in our brackish water. This animal works with our smooth cordgrass to help keep our water clean. Do you know what animal I'm talking about? Oysters! In our area, we have eastern oysters. Let's learn a little bit about them.
Our oysters are considered mollusks, which means that they make their own shells. Other types of mollusks you might know are mussels and snails. Also, our oysters are considered bivalves, which means they have two shells, as you can see here. They're attached at a hinge.
Similar to smooth cordgrass, oysters like this one help to keep our water clean. They are filter feeders. That means that they take in water, they'll eat the small little particles like phytoplankton, and then they'll release cleaner water, improving our water quality.
One adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water every day. Can you imagine drinking that much water?
Let's do a craft and learn even more about oysters.
For today's craft, you're going to be building your own oyster. Go to your library to get your craft supplies. You'll need to pick up an oyster shell and one of our baggies. Inside your baggie, you're going to have a couple of supplies that you need. You'll need an orange sheet of paper, a pink sheet of paper, a sticker, a piece of string, and a cotton ball. You'll also need some glue and scissors for this craft. Now to assemble our oysters, we're going to take out those supplies. Our first step is to cut out our orange sheet of paper. I've already cut out my orange sheet of paper. This is our gill. Now, just cutting out this shape is not enough. You can see these stripes on our gill. We need to fold those back and forth along those lines, just like we do a paper fan. I'm gonna fold it back and forth. It will kind of look like a paper fan or an accordion. Once it's all folded, we're gonna open it a little, just like this. You can see it's folded back and forth. Now we need to figure out where to place our gill. This gill for our oyster is just like a fish gill. The water passes through over our gill, just like it does a fish. Now remember, our oysters are a bivalve, so there's two different sides of our oyster. You might have a right side shell or a left side shell. So when placing our gill on our oyster, you want to make sure that the pointed side of our gill is pointed down towards the end of our oyster shell. So for this side of our shell, we're going to place it just like this, with that pointed side towards the pointed side. If you have the other side of our oyster, you're going to flip it over on the other side, but that pointed end is still faced towards that pointed end. Now that I know where to place my gill, I'm going to go ahead and glue it down. I'm going to put some glue down, and then I'm going to place my gill in that glue. Our next step is to cut out our pink piece of paper. I'm going to cut around my oval shape. This is our digestive gland for our oyster. The digestive gland makes digestive enzymes to help break down the food our oyster consumes. Now, to place our digestive gland in our oyster, we want it opposite of our gill, close to the tip of our gill, but not overlapping. Now, just like we glued down our digestive gland, I'm going to place the glue on the oyster shell and then place my digestive gland in the glue. The next part of our oyster is the sticker. The sticker represents the pulp, or the mouth of our oyster. Now, water passes through the gills into the pulp. Now, to place our pulp on our oyster, I'm going to peel my sticker off and place it so it's overlapping the point of our gill and our digestive gland. The next part of our oyster is our yarn. The yarn represents the stomach. Food passes through the pulp, through the stomach, over the digestive gland. Now, to place our stomach on our oyster, we want it to start at the pulp and go over the digestive gland off the side of our oyster. Now, it's very important that we put glue on the oyster shell where we want our string to go. Now, we typically do a loop with our stomach. If that's too difficult for you, you can do a straight line instead. Now I'm going to apply my glue. The last part of our oyster is the cotton ball. The cotton ball represents the adductor muscle. The adductor muscle opens and closes the two oyster shells. Now we're going to place our adductor muscle on our oyster shell. You can see this dark mark. This dark mark is actually a scar from the adductor muscle, so we're going to place it right on top of that. Now that we know where our adductor muscle goes, we're going to do a dab of glue on that dark mark and place our cotton ball in it. Now we have our completed oyster. We hope you've enjoyed this craft and learned a little bit more about our oysters.
When you're at the library picking up your craft supplies, make sure that you also get this fun oyster page. It has some information about our oyster recycling program, fun facts about oysters and oyster reefs, and just more about CBA. Also on the back are some fun activities that you can do. Thank you for joining us for this lesson of From Shelves to the Shores.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Feel free to contact us with any questions you have or to share pictures of you doing our experiment or craft. You can also check out our website or join us on Instagram or Facebook to learn more about what CBA is doing for the Bay.